Look, I'm going to start with my session this afternoon by showing you a video. At the conclusion of this video, you're going to be having a conversation at your table around one question and one question only. And the question is, so what's the point? So at the conclusion of this, you'll be having a 2-minute chat around that question, so what's the point? Here we go.
To answer that question, we set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Listen up for a noon appointment.
Have a seat and they'll be out in just a couple minutes.
Great,
thanks so much.
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room.
That's pretty good, right? At your table, have a chat. So what's the point? You've got 2 minutes. Your time starts now. Over to you. So what you've just seen in this video is a real-life example of UGRs in action. UGRs, unwritten ground rules, which I define as people's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. By the way, that definition is really important. People's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. In a clinic waiting room like this, there are unwritten ground rules, there are UGRs. So in a normal clinic waiting room, what are they? Can anyone yell one out? What's a normal unwritten ground rule in a clinic waiting room like this? Anyone? Don't look at the other people. That's a good point. You don't look at other people. It's sort of eyes down. What else? Sit down and be quiet. And the quiet bit's important, right? Your phone will probably be on silent. If your phone rings, you won't take the call in there. You'll probably take it outside or don't answer it at all. What else?
Make your own mind up.
Make your own lineup. Mind? Okay. Whether you should be standing, okay. Following 100%. So, but you spread yourselves out evenly, right? If there's only one person sitting in there, you don't go and sit next to them. You get weird looks if you did. So you spread yourselves out evenly. I asked this of a group a while back, and one guy puts his hand up and he goes, "Steve, you don't ask the person you're sitting next to what their illness is." That's true, I guess, right? Now get this, there's no document out front of the clinic saying here are the rules and procedures by which we must abide. We merely pick these up as a consequence of our life experiences, and the vast majority of us conform. They hold enormous power over us. And we've seen evidence of that in this video, because in the video they changed one UGR, that is when you hear the beep you stand up, and everyone conformed. I don't know about you, I'm annoyed I've seen that. I'd like to know how I would react in a situation like that. So UGRs, unwritten ground rules, are a function of human beings being together. As soon as we get a collection of people together, there will be UGRs. So they exist in clinic waiting rooms, they certainly exist in sporting teams, they're very powerful in sporting teams. They exist in social functions, they exist in families, although I haven't had the courage to go there, and they certainly exist in workplaces. And that's where I've spent more than 30 years of my work life exploring the UGRs in workplaces. So I'm going to share with you now some UGRs, some unwritten ground rules that I've encountered in workplaces over the years. What I'm about to share with you are real, they are not made up, they are actual UGRs, and they include these. At our meetings, it isn't worth complaining because we know nothing will get done. The only time anyone gets spoken to by the boss is when something is wrong. Our funniest jokes usually involve making jokes about our work colleagues. When I first wrote this one, it read more brutally, and it read our funniest jokes usually involve dumping on our workmates. We go through the motions with our bosses. Once they've gone, we do what we want. I can read the minds of a few of you right now who are thinking, so what's wrong with that one? But that's neither here nor there. Now, in an organisation that has documented policies, procedures, standards of service, very prescriptive job descriptions, all of the procedures written up, which counts most, the documentation or the UGRs? Silly question, right? You all know the UGRs count most. You know the incredible thing about UGRs? They are seldom talked about openly. People have to deduce them. A really good test for UGRs in any team or organisation is the new employee. If the new employee is lucky, they get an induction or orientation where they get told this is the way we do things around here. And then they go and find out the truth. And that was sort of a joke there, so thanks for working with me on that one. Really appreciate it. And they will find out by deduction. They will look for certain cues and clues to deduce the UGRs in the new team or company. So I've got a theory. I think this is pretty close to a 100% rule. Honestly, I'd like your feedback on this. I'm serious. I'd really like your feedback. Here's my theory. A person who is new to a company, new to a business, doesn't matter how senior they are, a person who's new to a company will normally stay quieter than they otherwise would. Yes or no? Don't you reckon? Pretty close to 100%, right? Not totally, but pretty close. Why do we stay quieter? Yell out an idea, please. Why do we stay quieter when we start? We're learning stuff. We don't want to stand out. You don't know the people. You're assessing risk, spoken by a true mining engineer. Well, let me paraphrase all of those, because I'm agreeing with all of you. I put to you, we stay quiet. Why? To find out what the UGRs are. Now, we don't have the term UGRs in our heads, but this is the natural, by the way, not confined to work. Any new group we're confronted with will normally stay quieter. Why? To check out the UGRs. Yes or no? Do you agree? Why do we want to find out the UGRs? Again, you'll have an answer, please. So we want to fit in, I agree. Well, that's it really, isn't it? So let me put this to you. And think about this, because this is amazing when you stop and think about it. We stay quiet. Why? To check out the UGRs. Why? In order that we can conform. That's the power that UGRs have over each and every one of us. So I have a hypothetical. You've got a good friend who highly respects your opinion. They're starting a job at a new mine that's a similar type and size to yours, and they've got the same job title as yours, and they're starting next week. They come to you with a specific question. The question is this. When I start my job next week, what should I look for or look at specifically to deduce, to work out what the UGRs are? In a moment, you're going to be chatting about this at your table, but before you do, a word of warning. If you're thinking that your advice might be, well, look at people's attitudes, while I agree with that and that's correct, that's not specific enough. So what am I actually looking at? Dig underneath that. Think of specific things, specific contexts that person ought to be looking for to deduce the UGRs in their new workplace. I guess what I'm asking you to do is bring to a level of consciousness that which happens naturally to us all, because the vast majority of us stay quieter when we're starting a new job, when we're looking at stuff. So what is it specifically that we're looking at or looking for to work out what the UGRs are? I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes for this at your table. The question again, when I start my job next week, what should I look for or look at specifically to work out, to deduce what the UGRs are in my new workplaces? Over to you. Brilliant. So who do people go to ask questions? So where's the real authority and leadership? Look, something similar to that is at a meeting, if something controversial is raised, who do people's eyes turn to? Right? So that's something similar to that. So somebody else, please. You'll have an idea. How do you get status? Oh, well, what you're actually saying is what gets recognised and rewarded, right? So that's really good. What gets recognised? You get noticed a lot? Well, we won't go there, but anyway. Somebody else, please. You'll have an idea. That's brilliant. How bad news is dealt with? Are people ducking for cover? Or is it actually owned and recognised as an opportunity to learn? That's really good, thank you. Somebody else? Who really makes the decision? Brilliant. So who do people go to? Who really makes decisions? Is it bosses? Is it people other than bosses? Which bosses if it is? So thank you, whoever that was. Somebody else? So who does what? And whether people are very stuck in their channels in terms of what they do, whether people literally say, not my job. That's really good. I want to see how people are treated. I want to see what is said about a boss when they're there. What do they say when a boss walks away? For that matter, what do they say about anyone when they're there? What do they say when anyone walks away? I think meetings are a great litmus test for the UGRs in a team or a company. So I want to see how meetings run. Is a meeting one-way information dissemination where one person's doing all the talking, or do people actively contribute at a meeting? Is a different point of view ever raised at a meeting? If it is, how's that greeted? At a meeting, I like to see what is said immediately after a meeting. I don't know if any of you have been to a meeting like I have, where the person is running it, they'll say something like this. I'll say, folks, I know this has been a tough decision, but I really do appreciate your contribution. Are there any other questions or concerns people have before we finish up? No? Okay, thanks folks, we'll see you next week. People stand up, walk out in the corridor, that's when it starts. At a meeting, I'd like to see where people's eyes are. I'm going to share with you a true story. This literally happened to me. I'm invited to present on the topic of UGRs to the 20 most senior people of a large organisation in Perth. Now, they've got a full day agenda. I've got 1 hour in that full day agenda. So I'm waiting outside for when it's my turn. It's my turn, I'm invited into their boardroom, and I walk into the boardroom. There's a big long board table. At the top of the board table is the CEO. Everyone else is down the sides, I'm down the bottom. That's fine, that's as I expected. 15 minutes into my presentation, I am gone, finished, shattered. Could not continue after 15 minutes. Please try and picture this if you can. For the entire first 15 minutes, every single person's eyes in that room were fixed firmly on the table in front of them. Can you picture this? A bit more feedback would have been useful here. I still need therapy on this. What's the message? I reckon you can destroy anyone. I'm looking at, as true as I stand here, I'm looking at 24 hours for 15 minutes. I reckon you can destroy anyone. You should try this. No, don't do it. It's too nasty. I'm gone after 15 minutes. We've all seen beginning speakers and trainers. They shake through nerves. Well, that happened to me because your confidence is shattered, I'm telling you. Your confidence is shattered. Now the shaking is starting to come out my voice. So I had to stop. I said, look, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop here. I took a couple of deep breaths, had to find something to lean on. I needed some support. And I said this. I said, look, to be honest, I'm picking up a UGR in this room right now. And I admit I may be incorrect in interpreting it, but I'm seeing everyone's eyes fixed firmly on the table in front of them. I'm picking up a UGR which says around here, outsiders have got nothing to contribute. Well, a few eyes lifted then. Bad mistake though, didn't you get any work with that company? And a good mate of mine, he said, Steve, do you think you might have jumped in too early in saying that? Well, I thought long and hard about that. You know what? If the same thing happened to me again tomorrow, I'd do exactly the same thing. In fact, I'll probably jump in a bit earlier. Why? Because there's a UGR in this group that says this. Around here, our internal politics are more important than showing respect to an outsider. Are you with me on this one? Somebody else said, Steve, Maybe it's a new board table they're all admiring. I don't think so. Now, I'm going to make a big call here, and I'm choosing these words carefully. The incredible, the remarkable thing about UGRs is that they're seldom talked about openly. Here's my big call. Seriously, I'm choosing these words carefully. I think there is nothing more powerful in a team or organisation than its UGRs. Nothing. And yet, remarkably, they are seldom, if ever, talked about openly. It's almost like there's a parallel universe. My behaviour, your behaviour is being driven by these UGRs, and yet we seldom, if ever, put it on the table. I put to you, it is your UGRs that are your culture. Culture is merely people's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. Culture is that easy to understand. People's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. It's the UGRs. Understand UGRs, we understand culture. Now, I've been unfair because I portrayed UGRs in a negative light. That is not necessarily the case. If you're in a positive team right now, by definition, there are positive UGRs. That has to be the case. If you're on an ordinary team right now, by definition, there are ordinary UGRs. The key question, and maybe as leaders, the biggest question I can put to you in our time together today is this. Are our current UGRs a function of luck or chance, or are they by design? In my experience, in the vast majority of cases, the prevailing UGRs are regarded as a function of luck or chance, where people are thinking or saying privately to one another, we're so lucky to have a good boss, or if only they'd get a transfer out of here, we'd be okay. If only, if only, if only. Well, I know we can do a whole lot better than that. We stumbled across, we did some research a little while back, and I'll be honest with you, we stumbled on this question. And now whenever I get the chance, I share this question with people that we asked in our research. The question we asked was this. If the culture of your workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? If the culture of your workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? In our research, we gave people a sliding scale. Started at 0. 0 is a legitimate answer. You might think the culture now, realistically, is as good as it's going to get. So 0 is legitimate. And then we gave a sliding scale, 10, 20, up to 100, and then 100% plus. I'll share with you some of the results we got from that. But before I do, I would like you to think about this for work as you personally experience it in your business. I'm repeating, 0 is the legitimate answer, right? You might think the question is, if the culture of our workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? 0 is a legitimate answer, or you might think 2% or 5% or whatever percent. I would like you to chat about this at your table. You've got 2 minutes to share ideas. The question again, if the culture of our workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? For 2 minutes, over to you. Thank you. So, I'm working with an engineering company, and I've got 70 Australian leaders in the room, and I put this question. I put it to them, just what you've done. They're sat at round tables like this. I've got a flip chart out the front, and I sort of half turn my back on them with a marker pen, and I go, okay, if you could yell out some numbers, and duplicating's okay because I want to get a sense of where you're at. If you yell out some numbers, I'm going to write them down. So then I turn my back fully on them, ready to write down the numbers that you're yelling out. I'm greeted by a wall of silence. Not one person says one thing. So I turn back round, put the cap back on the marker, and I say, okay, I'm changing my question. Can you give me a number that you heard at your table just now that may or may not have been yours? The boss was in the room. Are you with me on this? The numbers flowed. So I'll ask you the same question. Can you give me a number that you heard at your table just now that may or may not have been yours? I'm going to write them down because I want to get a sense of where we are. Like if we were one company, I wonder what the average would be. So yell out some numbers, please. And duplicating is fine because I want to get a sense of where we're at. So yell out some numbers, please. 100 plus, thank you. I appreciate the honesty there. 10, 70, 50 and a 20 I heard. 12, I would have preferred to 2 decimal points, but there you go. We got a 30 here. We've got a 10, we got an 80. We've We got a 42. Again, I would have preferred to 2 decimal places, but anyway, I'll live with it. 20, 10, 40 and a 30. Give me one more. 5 and a 0. I heard that, and that's brilliant. You must have a brilliant culture if that's the case, and good on you, quite seriously. Now, I'm going to read out these numbers. Mathematicians, do some calculations and tell me what the average is, please. 100 plus, 50, 10, 70, 70, 12, 30, 10, 80, 42, 20, 10, 40, 30, 5 and 0. What's the average? 32.74, is it? Thank you very much. Look, 40, is that reasonable? 40%? Let's presume you're wildly over-optimistic. Halve it. Make it 20%. Would you take it? The correct answer to that is duh. Honestly, through what other initiative could you possibly gain performance improvement of that magnitude? Seriously. Now, I didn't feed you those figures. In fact, I played with your brains. Did I say 0 was a legitimate answer enough times? Did you hear me say that? I gave you 2 examples. What were they? I said to you, you might think X or X. Do you remember what those numbers were? 2 or 5. So nobody listened, but anyway, 2 or 5 were the numbers that I said. So if anything, I played with your brains to bring you down, right? And we still get at least an average of 40% there. Like, do you understand what you're saying? You're saying the capacity for substantial performance improvement rests at our feet. It is the culture of our workplace. I mean, this is enormous. So I say get excited because we have, as leaders, we have the capacity to tap into that. By the way, I'm going to steer this in the safety direction in a little while. I want to start broad, but we're going to steer it into safety in a little while. But there is enormous potential there. My personal belief is that the vast majority of people want to be part of a positive, productive, dynamic, hardworking team. I honestly believe that. But you know what? To the extent that they're not, most people, and I include leaders here, have given up hope of it being any different. So they live with it. Well, can you imagine if we were able to truly differentiate ourselves based on our culture? I mean, how good would that be? I worked with Kmart over an 8-year period. Not many people realise this. Do you know that Kmart had literally lost money for 10 years in a row? Does anyone know that? Literally lost money for 10 years in a row. Wesfarmers purchased it, put in place a new leader. Guy Russo is his name, best leader I've ever met. And look at it now. Guy Russo, in front of an audience of around this size, all in retail, I was in the room, said to the audience this. He said, there's only 2 things you've got to worry about, your business model and your culture. Kmart had a toxic culture. Stores were ringing to the head office, as it was then called. They changed it to support office. Words matter. But stores were ringing to the head office and phones would ring out. There was internal warfare between different parts of the business. There was a toxic culture. I'm choosing that word deliberately. They used UGRs as the vehicle to understand and improve their culture. And that wasn't solely responsible for transforming Kmart, of course. But it was one of 4 key platforms of change. Look at it now, $500 million. It's like a cult. $500 million in profit. But more importantly, the culture was turned 180 degrees. The same people in that organisation who lived in a toxic, awful culture were then proud to say, I work for Kmart, and started protecting the culture themselves. So I put to you, this can be our point of differentiation, the fact we have a brilliant culture. And that's, in my view, a genuinely exciting prospect. And clearly, as I look at your faces right now, no one else shares that view, but I hope you join me as we go. That was another joke there. Thanks again for working with me. So why am I sharing this? I put to you that a key consideration is, are our current UGRs a function of luck or chance, or are they by design? I put to you, for our UGRs not to be by design is an abrogation of leader responsibility. If we intuitively know that 40% improvement in productivity can be gained by getting the culture right, then why aren't we focusing on that? So that's point number 1. Point number 2. Sometimes UGRs can hit us in the face. They're so obvious. I'll give you a couple of examples. Has anyone been to a meeting where a new person has said something they shouldn't have? Have you been that new person? I have. What happens when that occurs? It's this, right? There's stunned silence. and there might be a bit of nudging going on where people are going, give them time. And we think that's subtle, right? Well, it's not, because if you've been that new person, you know it's not subtle. You know that that's in your face. There is no way you're going to do that again. A second example of an in-your-face, obvious UGR. I work with a major motor vehicle brand. You wouldn't know this brand. The sales and marketing division were having a meeting in Sydney in a conference venue. So the whole of the sales and marketing division. I wasn't even at this meeting. I heard about this secondhand. The day prior to the meeting, one of the younger blokes on staff did something on social media which he shouldn't have. Bad mistake. Next day they got the conference. So at the conference, the boss of the division is addressing all of his staff. And during his presentation, he physically moves towards this guy and in front of everyone goes, "Be careful, young man, be careful." I feel bad doing that. Do I need to do that again? I called you young, that's a nice thing. What's the UGR? Can you picture this? In front of everyone, for goodness sake? What's the UGR? Singling out. Someone said to me, Steve, the UGR is never make a mistake. I disagree. I think the UGR is never get caught making a mistake. Now, this is the sales and marketing division. They're meant to be creative, dynamic, trying out new things. Good luck with that, if that's the UGR. Now, that boss got promoted. I can almost guarantee that UGR has stayed. So there's this thing called legacy UGRs, where they might have been true and valid 2 or 5 or 10 or even 20 years ago. All the players have changed seats, but the UGR remains. Does that make sense? So they're examples of in-your-face, obvious UGRs. Sometimes UGRs are far less obvious, but I would argue no less powerful. I want to give you an example of this. So over a 4-year period, I worked with McLaren Automotive in the UK. Some of you will know that McLaren have a Formula One team. I'm not working with that division. I'm working with the division that makes road cars. Anyone got a McLaren? Entry-level price in Australia, $375,000. When I was there last, one of the senior directors said to me, "Steve, we can give you a 10% discount if you like." I go, "Well, that's a game changer, isn't it? Thanks very much." I'm not a car buff, well actually I am now, having been to their premises in Woking and Surrey. It's the most remarkable premises I have ever seen. There are white tiles on the production plant, no robots dictating the speed at which these are built. They're built by hand. When they had the premises, white tiles. One year I was there and they were using a new compound in the tyres which was leaving black marks on the white tiles. So while they attended to that problem, they employed 3 people whose full-time job was to get the black marks off the white tiles. When they had the premises built, they said, "We want glass walls in our paint shop." They go, "But it's a paint shop." They go, "Yeah, we want our customers to see their cars being painted should they so wish. We want glass walls." They go, "But it's a paint shop." Guess what? They got glass walls. They design it with a thin veil of air that's pumped down each of the walls so the paint can hit the glass. How good's that? So when I was there last, I took 187 photos. This is how we're going to spend the rest of our time together today. This is the back of their premises. It's unbelievable. I can't capture it in photos. It's truly incredible. This is down on the boulevard where all their race cars, right from the word go, are on display. This is one of their road cars. This is the Senna, named after Ayrton Senna. Each of these cars sold, there are 500 of these made, and each of these sold for £700,000. Did you hear the currency that I just used? Would you like me to translate that into Australian dollars? £700,000 in Australian dollars equals a lot. The 500th of these was donated to charity. It went to auction and it sold for £2 million. I kid you not. At which time the owners of each of these said, "You bloody beauty, my car's worth more than I paid for it." I'm going to show you one more photo, which I think demonstrates a truly remarkable UGR. But you've got to understand the context. There is high security at McLaren. Once you get through security, it is probably a 500-metre drive before you get dropped off. One morning I've got a driver, we get through security, 50 metres past security, so nowhere near I need to get dropped off. I say to the driver, "Can you stop right now?" He's surprised but nonetheless stops, and I take this photograph. Take a look at this and tell me what you think is the UGR. This is incredible. Have a look at this. Can you see what he's got? It's a measuring tape. He's measuring the height of the hedge. Like, okay, so there's one in every crowd. Well, they drive a car through the hedge today. Well, I went back there a year later and I took this photograph. What's the UGR? Perfection, precision, attention to detail. I'm telling you that is McLaren. In the time I worked with them, they doubled their shift. They could not meet demand. Apparently there's a lot of people on this planet with a lot of money. They could not meet demand, so they doubled their shift. Having doubled their shift, they still could not meet demand. There became a tension in the business because the guys in sales and marketing were saying, come on, push the cars out quicker. Remember, there's no robots dictating the speed at which they're built. The guys in sales and marketing are saying, come on, push the cars out quicker. The guys in the production plant are saying, no, precision, attention to detail is paramount. That UGR has infected the gardeners. Now, the joke there, thanks for working with me again. I shared this photograph with the senior exec team. The CEO said to me, Steve, can I have a copy of that photograph? He didn't even know. Like, do you get it? What's my point? I think as human beings, there is an almost infinite number of cues that we mostly unconsciously tune into to form our view of this is the way we do things around here. And you know what? The vast majority of us conform. So people who join your place will mostly unconsciously be tuning into stuff like, well, what's the attention to detail here? Is near enough good enough, or has it got to be right? But it's not confined to attention to detail. There's this almost infinite number of cues. So there's stuff like people who join your organisation, again, mostly unconsciously, will be tuning into, what about somebody who's got really massive, heavy workload? Do people notice? Do they do anything? Do they care? What about somebody who's got grief in their personal life? Do people notice? Do they do anything? Do they care? There are all these cues that we tune into to form our view of this is the way we do things around here, and the vast majority of us conform. As an aside, and I'm not educated to make this statement, but this is my view. I think a massive source of workplace stress that is totally unexplored relates to contexts where people feel compelled to conform to UGRs that go against their personal values. And I honestly think that's totally unexplored. Do you get it? Because that's my best shot. Do you get it? It's your UGRs that are your culture, and there are enormous opportunities. So, can we measure UGRs? Well, the answer is, it's good news. We can. Soon after I created the UGRs concept, I approached a man I have great respect for. His name is Professor Jeff Souter. At the time, he was the Dean of the Graduate School of Management at the University of Western Australia. I rang Jeff and I said, Jeff, can I make a time to meet with you? I've been working on this idea called UGRs, and I want to run the idea past you because I want you to be brutally honest with me, to tell me whether this is an idea that's been done to death by other people under a different name, or whether this is a new way of looking at culture. Jeff said, sure, not a problem. So I went out, met with him, explained UGRs, and at the end of it, he said this to me. He said, Steve, I've got two things I want to say to you. First, we're going to work out a way for you to make money out of this because it's new. Second, we're going to put you in touch with Curtin University because the three of us are going to do world-first research into UGRs. Well, we've done the latter. That was a better one? Any donations for the former, greatly appreciated. We did our world-first research into UGRs and it was absolutely fascinating. We had 5 companies involved in the research, and we got them, and this was Professor Jeff Souter's idea, we got them anonymously to complete the sentence to what we now call lead-in sentences. So in our research, we got people to complete this sentence. Around here, customers are. Would any of you like to predict some of the responses we got to that? Around here, customers are. Annoying, you've been reading my notes, we literally had that. One person wrote, customers are a pain in the arse. Another wrote, customers are an interruption to my working day. I kid you not. Each of these companies had wonderful documentation proclaiming their commitment to customer service. What a load of rubbish if they're the prevailing UGRs. Another lead-in sentence was around here, if you criticise your boss, would you like to predict some of the responses we got to that one? One person wrote, CLM, career limiting move. We realised we were onto something. We realised that all we need to do was get people to reflect on the way we do things around here and get them to complete the sentence to what we now call lead-in sentences. Okay? We're good with that. So park that. Push that to one side. Now I'm venturing into other territory, right? So in 2019, just before COVID, 2019? When did COVID? Yeah, 2019, I spoke in Dallas at an international helicopter safety conference because they talk safety culture all the time, right? And on the basis of that, I was invited back the next time the conference ran, which was a year ago in Dallas, and I did the keynote. And I learned something last year in particular about the aviation industry from our friends across the ditch, because there was another guy who presented. Because I'm in Dallas, I attend the whole conference, right, because I'm learning lots myself. And there was a guy that I met from the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority, I think that's the correct name, it's up on the next slide, which I'll put up in a moment, about their role as regulators in the aviation industry in New Zealand. And he explained to the audience, I'm a member of the audience, he explained that they're moving away from solely regulation and compliance checking to being an educator. So they're taking on an educative role. And he argued this in his presentation. He said, we're advising operators, Civil Aviation Authority of New Zealand, that was the correct name. We're advising operators that they need to have these 5 things in place. One is around safety. Data collection. So you've got to collect data about safety, right? The next is data analysis. You've got to demonstrate that not only are you collecting data, but you're analysing it. The third is that data analysis is incorporated into leadership decisions. The fourth is that interventions take place on the basis of those leadership decisions. And finally, there is a monitoring of that process. So, this is the way that the Civil Aviation Authority of New Zealand are moving in the aviation industry. Now, I'm looking at this and my mind is just going into overdrive, right? Because in the aviation industry, over the past, it's only in the past 10 to 15 years, safety management systems have gained traction. And now it's common terminology within the safety component of the aviation industry. Safety management systems. And in the 2019 conference and last year, everyone is referencing culture. We need a safety culture, right? So I'm listening to this guy present this, and the alarm bells that are going off in my mind are, well, what data are being collected in relation to culture, right? If safety culture is so important, what data are you collecting around culture? And I quizzed people at the conference about it. You know what the answer was? Would you like to guess? Nothing. This is our aviation industry too, by the way. Nothing. Well, some of them do culture surveys. And I said, well, what status do they hold within the organisation? And these guys are honest. They say, very little. So it's all checkbox, tick box. Are you with me on this? So I say, there is an answer to this. And by the way, I'm invited back in November. So it was October last year, it's November. I'm going to Vancouver because at the end of the conference last year in Dallas, they said, look, we've held this conference in Dallas for quite a few years. There's some other options for cities that we can hold this in. And they gave people the right to vote. And they put, do you want it back in Dallas, Vancouver and a couple of other cities? And people said Vancouver, so I'm going to Vancouver. in November. How good's that? You're not very excited for me, but thanks anyway. So here's what I'm going to present to them, right, on the basis of this. We can incorporate my capacity for collecting the UGRs to their data collection. So let me get clearer on this. I will put to these guys, there are current state culture safety measures that you can get direct measurement on, current state, by getting people to complete 2 lead-in sentences only 2, anonymously, right? And they are around here when an unsafe act occurs and around here when it comes to safety. I will put to these guys that if you got your people to complete those 2 lead-in sentences, you'd get a current state measure on the safety culture as it is right now. Is this making sense? Yes or no? But I also believe, and you must acknowledge, I'm not a safety expert, I'm not a mining expert, I'm not an engineer, I'm coming this from an outside perspective. My view is that safety culture is much bigger than safety culture. If I get treated like shit from my boss, I might breach safety protocols out of spite for my boss. So that's bigger than safety culture. So there are associated cultural aspects that will impact on safety culture. Is that a reasonable proposition or not? Yes or no? Thank you, because it's genuine. I'm learning myself. This is really new stuff. So I think, in addition to those 2 current state lead-in sentences, there are associated ones, and this is my best shot. I am going to put to you that there are contributing cultural attributes, and those most important contributing cultural attributes to safety are these: care and respect. If we have care and respect for one another, that's going to impact on the safety culture. If we have a willingness to engage in challenging conversations, that's going to impact on the safety culture. If we have an appetite for new ways of doing things, that's going to impact on safety culture. And finally, if we have teamwork, that's going to impact on safety culture. Are they reasonable? If they are, then I put to you, we can craft lead-in sentences to open a window into each of those contributing cultural elements. And they are these. Around here, people are treated. For willingness to engage in challenging conversations, around here when challenging conversations need to happen. And as I share these, I ask you to ponder, how would my people complete that sentence? Appetite for new ways of doing things, around here when someone comes up with a new idea. And finally, teamwork, around here when someone needs help. I wonder how your people would complete these sentences. Now, my work over the last more than 30 years has focused on the broad issue of culture. Not safety culture, but culture. And we undertake what we call a UGRs stock take, where we get people to complete the sentence, to lead in sentences like these, but more broadly, right? And when we do this, by the way, we avoid the use of the term UGRs survey. Why? Because there are UGRs to do with surveys. And it goes like this: around here we have a survey every year, nothing happens, so why bother to treat it seriously? So we deliberately call it a stock take. And it feels very different to a survey because we have a lead-in sentence and then a free-range text box where people can write 1 word or multiple paragraphs. There's no limit. Next to each text box, we get them to tick a box and self-categorise their response as having a positive, neutral or negative impact on the organisation overall. So if somebody writes, around here people are treated like bloody school children, they tick the negative box. Around here people are treated with respect and dignity, they tick the positive box, somewhere in between will be neutral. So now we've got 2 forms of data. We've got quantitative, a percentage breakdown of positives, neutrals and negatives, self-categorised for each lead-in sentence. And we've got the qualitative, which is the words that people write, which are so rich it's unbelievable. There's so much value in the words that we collect through that. Is this making sense? Yes or no? Okay, so this is where I like to get a feel for where you are all at, because I would like you to guess. I'm going to give you 2 lead-in sentences in a moment from this list that I've just shared with you. And we're going to use Mentimeter. Those of you who are not familiar with it, it's an online poll which we're going to access via your phones. So if your phones aren't handy, grab them if you would, please. And I would like you to estimate, if we did this in your organisation, what would the percentage breakdown be of positive, neutral and negative responses if we did this for if your people did it? If they all completed the sentence and self-categorised their response as having a positive, neutral or negative impact. Is this making sense? It should make sure it adds up to 100. I did this with a group of financial planners a little while back, and I said, I don't know, around here people are treated. I said, guess what the percentage breakdown would be. And I said, okay, who wants to go public? And the guy puts his hand up and he goes, and I said, say it in the order of positive, neutral, negative. So if you think 60% positive, 20% neutral, 20% negative, say 60-20-20, 60-20-20. The first guy puts his hand up and he goes, 70-20-20. Financial plans, I don't know, GST, commission, I don't know. It should add up to 100, right? So here is the QR code. So if you could all focus in on that, and you'll have 1 lead-in sentence. This links to around here when an unsafe act occurs. I would like to estimate, for you to estimate what the percentage breakdown would be if we did that in your organisation and everyone completed that sentence around here when an unsafe act occurs. So if we were one organisation, there's some worrying. That's a worrying finding. If we were one organisation, do you agree? Because it's when we do this online, we have a 4th column. We have positive, neutral, negative, and our 4th column is non-positives. The non-positives is the neutrals and the negatives combined. Why do we do that? Well, if it's not positive, it's not the way we want it to be. And in this case, we've got 50% non-positives. And some of the words for the neutrals would be maybe it depends, if the boss is around, or it depends how severe the incident is, or whatever. I'm guessing. Is this making sense? Look, this varies a lot. I work with a law firm in the UK over COVID. I have never seen worse results. And I've been doing this a long time. We've done these stock takes for many, many years in many countries. And this law firm in the UK was a total train wreck. Like it was like 75% non-positives for most of their lead-in sentences. It was extraordinary. But even the best, you'll never get 100%. We're human beings. But the quest is then to improve. But this is, if this was one organisation, I'd say, guys, this is a worry. 50% not positive. Wouldn't you agree? Because despite your best attempts, despite all the documentation and the compliance requirement, you know, when it was a real treat for me to sit at the back of the room this morning and listen to the wonderful presentations that were made. But one thought that entered my head, I'm being real honest here, one thought that entered my head is, what's your role? Is it absolute attempt to minimise risk? Is that your role? Or is it to create a culture that not only minimises risk, but creates a culture where people get joy out of coming to work? You know what I'm saying? All the focus this morning was regulatory and compliance stuff. And I'm not diminishing that. But I think, I might get into trouble for saying this. If that's it, I think there's more than that, isn't there? Because you guys come to work every day with genuine and really good intentions, and yet look at the results. So putting in place those regulatory requirements is not enough. Can we do one more? Well, that's a rhetorical question. You're going to. Wayne, can we go to the next one? Swing on to the next one. Thanks, mate. This one is around here, people are treated. So this comes from the... So this one is current state. The next one is cultural attributes that impact. So people are treated. What would your results be if we went to your place? And look, this is a... And we've asked this lead... We normally craft lead-in sentences to link back to the values of the company because the values are a statement of the aspirational culture. So that's when I do general culture work, which is mostly what I do, we link it back to the values. So we craft each UGR stock take differently for each organisation because their values are different, their aspirational culture is different. But this is a common one we often ask around how people are treated. And if this was one company, I'd say this is a good result. It's not bad, it's not brilliant, but this is a good result. We're around 65 to 70% positive. That's a good result. Now, there's still opportunities to get better, but this is a good result. It occurs to me now, and I've not thought about this before, but the associated contributing cultural elements, you know, the extra 4 lead-in sentences, the results from that might give you a clue about what's contributing to less than positive results for when an unsafe act occurs. So maybe it's a lack of teamwork. Maybe it's not how people are treated, maybe it's a lack of teamwork or an unwillingness to challenge other people's ideas or something like that. That might open a window into what's causing a less than positive result when an unsafe act occurs, if that makes sense. How much time have I got left, Meg? 15? Let's do this. No, I'm not going to do that. Back to the PowerPoint one if we can. Thank you. So, when we do a stock take, of course the first thing we do is provide it back to the leaders. They see the results, and then we can share that with as many people as possible, preferably everyone. Why? Because you want shared ownership of this stuff. See the results. What is that you as an individual can do differently to make this better, such that were we to do this again 6 or 12 months down the track, we'd see an improvement. Personal ownership is the key. That was the key at one of the keys at Kmart. Shared ownership of the culture. I say as leaders, you are primarily but not solely responsible for the culture. Why? Because staff play the game of UGRs. Employees play the game of UGRs unconsciously. So we can have a good leader with an ordinary culture. Why? Because of the employees. We can have an ordinary leader with a good culture. Why? Because of the employees. So employees play the game, but unconsciously most of the time. So once you familiarise people with UGRs, share them results of the stock take like that, they can get excited about the prospects of working. I repeat, I believe that the vast majority of people want to be part of a positive, productive, dynamic, hard-working team. I honestly believe that. Too many of us have given up. Okay. One more video, and you'll be having a chat after this.
Behaving differently from your group can make you an outcast. But what would you do if you knew your group was entirely wrong? Would you, for example, sit in a burning room just because everyone else does? This hotel conference suite has been prepared for a focus group discussion on internet shopping. But all is not as it seems. We've been busy. The place is rigged with 4 hidden cameras and 6 concealed microphones. And psychology professor Dominic Abrams is watching from our control room, which we've built in an adjoining suite.
Now it's just a question of sitting and waiting.
Right, so this is a questionnaire all about kind of shopping habits and everything here. So just move that off your chair. So you can...
Our first participant is Mary Mizuno, a London student who thinks she's arrived early. What she doesn't know is that behind this door there's about to be a serious fire in the hotel kitchen. Or at least the illusion of one, created by a smoke machine and some sound effects. What will she do?
She's now noticed the smoke and is concerned. At this point, she decides to investigate to find out what's going on. She's immediately taken responsibility for figuring out what to do.
Mary does the sensible thing and evacuates quickly. She even leaves her bag and coat.
As I've never been in a fire situation before, I tried to remember the kind of things that you're supposed to do, so I left my stuff and just went out.
But Mary was on her own. This time, we've planted 7 actors who are all in on the experiment. We've said to them, when you see the smoke, do nothing. Our second participant is Lauren Heffernan, also a student. What will she do?
In this situation, she'll be following a script. The script is partly written in her mind. It's a script which is borrowed from things like sitting exams. Most situations like this have some element of expected or scripted behaviour.
But what will happen to her script when we make a slightly unusual situation very unusual? Nothing to start with, so we get her attention. Now, how long before she dashes out of the room?
She's checking increasingly to see what the other people are thinking. But who can she appeal to? The answer is nobody. She turns to the norm of the group. Ignore the smoke. In a real fire, the people in this group would be in very serious danger by now.
I was looking for some sort of reaction from someone else, even just the slightest little thing, that they'd recognise that there was something, you know, going on here. For me to kind of react on that and then do something about it, I kind of needed prodding.
She's waiting for someone else to react. Why isn't anyone else reacting? She feels uncomfortable. She doesn't want to embarrass herself by taking the lead, taking action. But something is definitely wrong.
Lauren stayed in the room for 20 minutes after spotting the smoke, concerned but immobile. The fire brigade say that if this fire had been real, even if flames hadn't burnt through the door, she would have died of asphyxiation in this time. In the end, we had to ask her to leave.
Pop out here. Thanks.
I was surprised that I didn't do anything at all. I was just literally waiting. I just thought that someone else is surely going to say something soon. And because no one else did, I just didn't react at all.
We tried the experiment 10 times, and the same thing happened over and over again. If the person was on their own, they left quickly. If they were in a group of 3 or more, they stayed, rooted to the spot. The average length of time they stayed, 13 minutes. Only one person in our experiment didn't go along with the crowd behaviour, artist James McKechnie.
What's that coming up from under the table? Is it fire?
I don't know.
Is it fire?
We should just wait till she comes back. Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. She said just to wait here, didn't she?
What's that? What is that?
I don't know. She said just to wait here, didn't she?
What? Is that?
She's coming right down now.
James isn't going to sit in a dangerous room just because everyone else does.
Yeah.
Or is he? The power of the group proves irresistible.
The reassurances of the rest of the group that somebody else is responsible seem to be sufficient to pull him back into place. Instead of leaving the room and calling for help, he sits back down again and waits. Now everybody's looking at the smoke, but in some ways that gives the group even more influence. After all, if everybody can see the smoke and no one's panicking, well, it would be crazy for him to do it too.
James stays in the room for another 10 minutes before finally leaving. In a real fire, he wouldn't have been able. He'd have been unconscious and close to suffocation.
Incredible, right? Have a chat at your table. Is there smoke undetected at your place? Question 1. Question 2, what do you think the UGRs could be that are causing inaction, if that's the case? So, question 1, is there smoke with inaction in your place? Does that question make sense? Is this happening at your place? That's question number 1. Secondly, what could some of the UGRs be if that's happening at your place? Is that reasonable? So I'm going to begin to wrap up before we take some questions. And by the way, if anyone, I've got a little booklet on UGRs which describes the 5 steps we can go through to use UGRs as a vehicle to both understand and improve the culture. And it's not targeted specifically at safety management, it's just targeted at culture generally. If anyone would like a copy of that, zip me an email, steve@ugrs.net. Happy to send it to you. So we now live in Melbourne. We used to live in the Gold Coast at Hope Island. This is a picture of the gym that I used to go to in Sanctuary Cove. So you can see there is a road that goes up there. There's the entrance to the gym there, and then you drive up, come down, and there's your parking bays there. So one morning I arrive at the gym for a 6:30 class, and in front of me is a BMW. Before I tell you that, these 2 bays closest to the doorway have a sign. Would you like to guess what that sign is? That's the sign. I literally took a photo. That's what you see when you drive into the bay. The next 3 bays down have an interesting sign, and those bays have this sign sitting out front: mothers with prams parking only. So I'll go to a class on a Saturday morning at 6:30. In front of me is a BMW. The BMW drives in and around and parks in the mothers with prams bay. Out of the car gets a young lady. I later found out her name is Bridget. She is a university student, has no child, so far as I'm aware, at the time, no intention of having a child, but she's parked in the mothers with prams bay. What is her thought process when she parks there? You can't not see that sign, right? That's the reason I'm showing you that. You drive in, it's in your face. I put to you, she is not thinking, I don't care. I put to you, she is justifying and rationalising her decision to park there through a particular thought process. So, I would like you at your table for 60 seconds to have a conversation. What is Bridget thinking when she parks there? Your time starts now. Over to you. Too early for mothers, thank you. Only be a short while. Oh, I've seen others do it. Too early for parking inspectors. She doesn't have a bloody pram in the boot. I told you that, no. They're always empty anyway. She could be thinking it's a stupid rule. It's sexist. No? Okay, well, we'll move on. Here's one thing that really bloody annoys me. People who park in disabled bays when they shouldn't. It just annoys the hell out of me. I will never park in a disabled bay. I won't go in the mothers with prams bay. In fact, on occasions when I went, all the bays were full except for those bays up the top. I parked on the grass, which is probably breaking another rule. I don't care. I won't go in those bays. For me, it is a must not do. That is not the case for Bridget. For Bridget, it is a should not do. I put to you, as soon as something is a should or a should not, we can find reasons to justify breaking it of the type you've just articulated. That is, stupid rule, I'll only do it once. I've seen others do it, they got away with it. You with me on this? I used to fly a lot before COVID, and I was a platinum flyer with Virgin and with Qantas. They both have an internal rule, not made public, for platinum flyers, and that is when you give your boarding pass, the staff member is meant to use your name. One day I get a flight from the Gold Coast to the Melbourne on a Virgin flight. I give my boarding pass. The flight attendant says, "Welcome aboard." Doesn't use my name, no big deal. I get on the plane, sit on the seat, look on the tarmac. There's a guy stood on the tarmac, earmuffs, high-vis vest, safety gear wrapped around his arm. For Virgin Airlines, in that instance, was safety a must or a should? It wasn't a trick question. He had stuff wrapped around his arm. All the safety gear. He's complied. No, we're wearing it. Sorry. My story's being ruined right now, isn't it? So. Normally goes so smoothly too. I'll give you the answer. In that instance, in Virgin Airlines, safety was a must, right? Was customer service a must or a should? Are you with me? An employee embezzles money from the company that pays them. What happens? This wasn't meant to be a trick question. Actions kick in, they're gone, right? For 99.9 repeating % of us, the prospect of stealing money from the company that pays us is so much of a must not do that it just doesn't enter your head, correct? What about our values? What about our safety culture? You with me? So here's the opportunity to elevate this to a must as opposed to a should. At that gym, there's a swimming pool, and the swimming pool lanes are marked slow, medium, fast. It used to annoy the shit out of me. I'd walk in and people would be walking along the fast lane. Now, maybe they thought they were walking fast and therefore qualified. I don't think so. I felt like going to the owners of the gym and saying, is that a recommendation or a requirement? You with me on this? So, culture generally, I think there are exciting opportunities for each of us as leaders, genuinely exciting opportunities. And safety culture is a component of that. And again, I think there are massive opportunities that can be gained. I know that from those Mentimeter results that you provided in this room today, where 50% were not positive, despite your absolutely great intentions. Guys, happy to take questions. It's been a real treat to interact with you today, so thanks a million.